Picture this. You walk into a room and suddenly the atmosphere feels heavier. No words have been spoken, no dramatic entrance staged, yet people notice. Some look uneasy, others look intrigued, a few even intimidated. What changed? It wasn't your clothing, your title, or your wealth. It was your presence. True strength is not always loud. In fact, the kind that makes the deepest impact is often the quietest. The man who does not rush to fill silence, who does not defend every small jab, who does not need to broadcast his worth, he holds a power most people cannot understand. And because they cannot understand it, they fear it. This is the essence of Stoic strength, an internal steadiness that requires no applause. It radiates without performance. It unsettles because it is untouchable. Today, I want to explore this phenomenon in depth. Why does inner composure provoke discomfort in others? How can we cultivate this presence? And how does Stoicism provide a timeless blueprint for living with such power? The misconception of power. When we hear the word power, we often think of visible dominance. CEOs controlling corporations, politicians commanding crowds, athletes breaking records, or influencers attracting millions of followers. These are external, measurable, and noticeable. But power in its purest form is not about how many people you control. It's about how deeply you control yourself. Stoicism has long argued this. Marcus Aurelius, perhaps the most famous Stoic philosopher, ruled the Roman Empire, yet constantly reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." External control is fleeting. Crowds shift allegiance, wealth can evaporate, influence rises and falls. But mastery of your own mind, your impulses, your emotions, your choices, is a fortress no one can breach. And when you live from that fortress, people notice. They can't explain it, but they feel it. Why? People fear what they can't control. Human beings like predictability. It makes us feel safe when we can categorize someone. He's always agreeable, she always seeks validation, he'll get defensive if I push him. We relax. We think we know the rules of the game. But when you stop playing by those rules, people become uneasy. If you don't laugh at every joke, they wonder what you're thinking. If you don't rush to explain yourself, they panic at the silence. If you don't rise to their provocations, they feel powerless. The truth is, most people rely on others for feedback loops. They poke and they expect a reaction. When they don't get one, the mirror breaks. And in that broken mirror, they confront their own insecurity. This is why Stoic composure is unsettling. It refuses to be manipulated. It refuses to dance for approval. It refuses to fill empty space with nervous chatter. Your stillness forces others to confront their lack of stillness. The weight of presence. Think about the difference between someone who constantly asserts themselves and someone who doesn't need to. The first shouts, demands, dominates with noise. Their energy feels frantic, as if they're always proving something. The second listens more than they speak. They let silence hang. They carry themselves with dignity. And when they finally do speak, every word lands with weight. This is presence. It is not something you buy. It is not something you fake. It is cultivated. It is the result of living with inner alignment, of not betraying yourself for applause, of practicing restraint when others rush. When you walk with presence, you don't need to convince anyone. They feel it. The Stoic blueprint Stoicism gives us a framework for this kind of presence. At its heart, Stoicism asks, what can I control and what must I let go? You cannot control whether people like you. You cannot control whether they gossip, mock, or misunderstand. But you can control your response. You can choose dignity over reaction, calm over panic, principle over popularity. Epictetus, who was once enslaved, taught that true freedom comes from some self-control. No man is free who is not master of himself. That lesson hasn't aged. In fact, it's more relevant now than ever. In a world obsessed with quick reactions, hot takes, and public validation, the ability to remain centered is rare and therefore powerful. Examples from history. Consider Marcus Aurelius again. As emperor, he faced betrayal, war, and constant political intrigue. Yet, his journal, later published as Meditations, is filled not with boasts, but with reminders to himself to remain calm, humble, and steady. He could have ruled through fear and dominance. Instead, he sought to rule himself first. His power did not come from shouting orders, but from embodying stability. His presence influenced generals, senators, and citizens alike. Now consider Epictetus, born into slavery. He had no wealth, no title, no political advantage. Yet, even in chains, he taught philosophy that inspired leaders. His power was not external, it was internal, and because of that, it outlasted empires. Both examples remind us external circumstances do not define your presence, inner mastery does. Practical application: how to build Stoic presence. It's easy to admire the Stoics, but how do we apply this in our own lives? Let's break it down into practical steps. Embrace silence. Most people rush to fill gaps in conversation. Try the opposite. Let pauses breathe. Let silence work for you. The more comfortable you are with it, the more others lean in. Resist immediate reactions. When provoked, pause. When mocked, breathe. When tested, observe. Often, the most powerful response is no response at all. Detach from validation. Notice how often you seek approval, likes, compliments, laughter. Practice doing things without announcing them. Build confidence in the act itself, not the applause afterward. Align actions with values. People sense authenticity. If your words and actions align, your presence deepens. If you compromise for popularity, it weakens. Move deliberately. Presence isn't rushed. Walk, speak, and act with intention. Slowing down communicates confidence and control. Accept discomfort in others. Some will admire your calm, others will resent it. Accept both reactions without bending. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. The mirror effect: why others react strongly. When you embody this kind of presence, you become a mirror. People see in you what they lack in themselves. To the insecure, you seem arrogant. To the envious, you seem threatening. To the grounded, conflict, the arena of power. People often think presence means avoiding confrontation, as if calmness is weakness. But nothing could be further from the truth. Presence is not passivity, it is measured response. When others lash out, you choose your ground. You decide if the battle is worth entering, and if you do enter, you do so with precision. Seneca once wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That doesn't mean you never act. It means when you act, you do not let anger dictate your terms. You fight only for what matters, and you fight with dignity. Think of a martial artist. He doesn't swing wildly. He studies, he waits, he strikes only when necessary. His discipline, not his fury, makes him formidable. That is Stoic conflict: controlled, purposeful, unshakable. The problem of envy. Let's address something uncomfortable. When you cultivate presence, you will trigger envy. People may admire you privately, but undermine you publicly. They may mock your restraint as arrogance. They may resent your ability to remain steady when they crumble. Here's the truth. Envy is not about you. It is about them. Your calm reflects their chaos. Your discipline reflects their lack of it. Your consistency exposes their inconsistency. This is why you must never let envy dictate your path. If you shrink to make others comfortable, you betray yourself. If you retaliate to prove your worth, you stoop to their level. Instead, let envy be evidence. It proves you carry something rare. No one envies the mediocre. People envy what they cannot replicate. Humility and authority, the balancing act. At this point, some may worry, if I cultivate presence and command respect, won't I risk becoming arrogant? It's a valid question. True Stoic strength must balance humility with authority. Humility reminds you that you are not above others. Authority reminds you that you must not shrink below them either. Think of Marcus Aurelius again. He was emperor, the most powerful man alive, yet his private writings are filled with humility. Reminders that he was mortal, that he too would die, that all titles fade into dust. But humility did not make him weak. He still commanded armies, led an empire, and enforced justice. His humility gave him clarity. It prevented ego from blinding his judgment. For us, the lesson is this: never confuse humility with self-erasure. Humility is truth. It is seeing yourself as neither God nor worm, but human, capable of greatness, limited by mortality. And when you stand in that truth, authority becomes natural. The discipline of speech presence is often measured by speech. People reveal themselves through words. Some speak recklessly, some too quickly, some too much. The Stoic approach is different. Words are weapons, sharp, powerful, and irreversible once spoken. That is why Epictetus taught, be silent for the most part, or if you speak, say only what is necessary and in few words. This doesn't mean muteness. It means intentionality. Speak less, but say more. Pause before answering, and people will wait for your words. Refuse gossip, and your dignity rises. Guard your promises, and your reliability grows. Presence deepens when people know your words are not cheap. Stoicism in modern life. It's easy to revere philosophers from centuries past, but does this philosophy actually work today? In our world of constant noise, social media, and relentless distraction? The answer is yes, perhaps more than ever. At work, when colleagues argue for recognition, the one who remains steady earns trust. When deadlines cause panic, the one who stays calm becomes a leader. In relationships, when partners provoke, the one who chooses patience deepens respect. When family tensions rise, the one who stays grounded anchors the room. In public life, when society pushes outrage, the one who thinks before reacting stands apart. When opinions flood timelines, the one who speaks with clarity is heard. The principle hasn't changed. The battlefield is different, but the strategy is the same. Presence wins, the leadership of stillness. Let's talk leadership. Too often, leaders confuse control with presence. They micromanage, they dominate, they demand obedience. But true leadership is the opposite. A true leader does not need to shout. His steadiness gives direction. His composure creates confidence. His restraint commands more respect than his orders ever could. Imagine two generals. One rages, shouts, threatens. The other stays calm, observes, and speaks only when necessary. Which army would you rather follow into battle? Presence is leadership. It is silent authority, the kind that people choose to follow, not because they are forced, but because they trust. Enduring hardship, the crucible of presence. Presence is not built in comfort, it is forged in hardship. When you lose money, when betrayal strikes, when illness hits, when plans collapse, this is the crucible. This is where presence either breaks or strengthens. Stoicism trains us to endure without collapse, to accept what we cannot change, to fight where we can, to stand steady in both triumph and disaster. Marcus Aurelius buried children, endured war, survived plagues, Epictetus bore chains, Seneca faced political enemies and ultimately death, yet all left behind writings that resonate centuries later. Why? Because their presence was not situational, it was unconditional. That is the power we must aim for. Not presence when things go well, but presence that outlives circumstances. The quiet test of daily life. Of course, most of us won't rule empires or face literal chains. That our tests are quieter. A boss undermines you in front of others. A partner pushes your buttons. A stranger insults you online. A plan you worked on collapses. In these moments, your reaction defines your presence. Will you lash out, crumble, or retreat? Or will you breathe, stand tall, and act with dignity? Presence is not just for grand occasions. It is for Tuesday mornings, awkward meetings, and small provocations. Each moment is training. The paradox of presence, attraction and isolation. One of the paradoxes of cultivating presence is this: you will attract people, but you may also feel isolated. People will admire your steadiness, seek your advice, respect your authority, yet some will withdraw, uneasy around your silence. This is the cost of living differently. Most people are addicted to noise and reaction. When you refuse both, you step outside the crowd. But this is not loneliness, it is clarity. You no longer crave validation from everyone. You no longer fear disapproval. You stand with those who value authenticity, not performance. And that smaller circle is far stronger than a large but shallow one. The final confrontation, death. No Stoic teaching is complete without addressing the ultimate test, death. Presence means nothing if it crumbles at life's end. That is why Stoics meditated constantly on mortality. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." To live with presence is to live with death in mind, not fearfully, but consciously. When you know time is short, you no longer waste it on trivial arguments, endless scrolling, shallow approval. You live deliberately, and when death arrives, you face it as you faced life, calmly, steadily, with dignity. That is the ultimate presence, one that even death cannot diminish. Practical framework. Daily Stoic rituals. To close, let me offer a practical framework, a daily rhythm to build this presence. Morning reflection. Before the world rushes in, remind yourself of your values. What do you control today? What can you not control? Anchor your mind before the noise begins. Intentional silence. Carve out minutes of quiet. No phone, no music, no chatter, just presence. This trains your comfort with stillness. Measured speech. Throughout the day, pause before answering. Let your words pass through two gates. Is it true? Is it necessary? Physical composure. Train your body to mirror your mind. Controlled breathing, deliberate movement, calm posture. Presence is felt physically before it is understood mentally. Evening review. At night, reflect. Did I live aligned with my principles today? Where did I falter? What can I improve tomorrow? This rhythm, repeated daily, transforms presence from an idea into a habit. Final closing, becoming the silent storm. So, where does this leave us? We began with an image. You walk into a room and the atmosphere shifts. People cannot explain it, but they feel it. That is not magic. That is cultivated presence. Stoicism gives us the tools: self-control, silence, assignment, endurance. Life gives us the tests: conflict, envy, hardship, death. Your task is not to avoid these, but to walk through them with dignity. To stand so steady that others either admire or fear you, but never ignore you. Because true power does not beg for attention. It does not scream to be seen. It simply radiates. And when you embody that, you don't just live, you lead. You don't just endure, you inspire. You don't just survive, you become the storm others can't ignore.